Welcome to No Apologies on Beck. I'm your host, Lori Hins, and with me tonight, I'm very excited. I'm going to go right into the segment. With me tonight from Tennessee is Carol Swain. Dr. Carol Swain is with us, remoting in, and I am so excited to have you on, Carol. I've been very much looking forward to your event at the Bismarck, well, we call it the Belle Mayhews Auditorium here in town, which is a lovely venue, and I know that you're going to be coming to town, so I'm thrilled to have you on.
Thank you so much.
So I thought I would just give people a little background on you just to start so that they know who you are and what you're all about. So can you give us just a little bit of a biography, a mini bio?
Well, I was born and raised in southwestern Virginia. I was one of 12 children. We grew up in rural poverty. The early part of my life, I lived in a 2-room shack with no indoor plumbing. I dropped out of school after completing the 8th grade. I married at 16, had my first child by 17. By the time I was 20, I had 3 small children. I got a high school, I earned a high school equivalency in my early 20s, went to a community college, got the first of 5 degrees.
Well, the first of 5 degrees. That sounds like a kind of an amazing life there, Carol. So I know that you have been on very, very large networks, and you've been on with Tucker Carlson and CNN and all that. But what a humble beginning. And now you're speaking all over the United States and probably elsewhere, I'm guessing.
I have spoken, all over not all over the world, but I've spoken in Southeast Asia, several countries there. And I've spoken across the U.S. I've never spoken in North Dakota before.
Woo!
So I'm so
happy.
excited. It'll be my first visit.
Well, I think that you are going to be very well received here, just a guess, because we are incredibly friendly. They say Minnesota nice, and it's true, but North Dakota nice is better alliteration. So let's talk a little bit about not only your background, we have already hit that, but I want to talk about your books, because you are an author. So people may not know that not only are you coming to speak, but you've got books out, and that you'll probably be doing a book signing at the Bell, I'm guessing, as well.
I will. And I have either edited or written 11 books, and I'm working on 3 right now. And but only in the last few years, I would say since 2011, did I start really focusing on the general population. Up until that time, I was focused on reaching my colleagues in political science and writing for other academics. And at some point, the issues impacting the nation, they were concerning me so much that I felt like I needed to reach a wider public. And so I chose to focus on trying to reach everyday Americans, people like me, people that came from ordinary backgrounds, like the humble beginnings I had.
Now, I have some graphics that I had that are made up for you so that you can talk about each of these books. But one of them that I saw was called Black Eye for America, How Critical Race Theory is Burning Down the House. And is this one of your latest books, Carol?
It was published last August. And it was written in response to demands from parents, teachers, administrators, people who were trying to understand what was happening in the world with CRT. I started the book in May of 2021 with a co-author, and we got it out in August, and it's been a bestseller. I mean, it was self-published by Be the People Publishing. That's my brand. It was my first self-published book by my own company, but it was the right thing to do. We got the book out, in about 2 months, and it has really reached people and made an impact. And the whole idea was to equip Americans so that they would understand what CRT is, where it came from, how it manifests itself in our society, why it is anti-Christian, anti-American, anti-civil rights, anti-constitution. And it has 2 chapters on how to fight back, a glossary, because they're always changing the terms, and then resources. And so I think it's a very important book.
Well, it is important that parents know not only about CRT, but what it is and how it manifests itself too. Now, I have another book that I would like to show. This one, and you made reference to this because this is your brand, Be the People. And now, Be the People, it says, a call to reclaim America's faith and promise, and that speaks to me.
Yeah, and that book was first published in 2011, and I updated it after the 2020 elections. And the reason I wrote the book was at that time, 78% of Americans professed to be Christian. And I was looking at what was happening in our country, in 2009 and in 2010, and how could it be in a country where 78% of the people at that time professed a belief in Christianity, that we were electing the politicians we were, and they were implementing the policies. And so part of what it was clear to me that either the people did not understand their faith, they didn't understand what was taking place in this country, and that there was a disjuncture. And so what I tried to do with that book was to alert people to all the things that were taking place. And even back then, we saw the beginnings of Orwellianism, George Orwell's 1984. There were things happening in Washington. That was when the alliances between the National Security Agency, the Obama government, and the Google, big tech, that was being forged back then. Mm-hmm. And there was also the president sought and received the authority to assassinate American citizens suspected of terrorism. And let me say kill American citizens suspected of terrorism, and some were killed. And that was just like so foreign because in America, we had a constitution, we had due process. Being an American meant something. So I sounded an alarm. There is a chapter on America's religious foundations, about how the country was founded. There's a chapter on abortion, one on families, one on immigration, and just various issues that were impacting the society at that time. And my conclusion was to be the people, and that's a play on the words, we the people, from the preamble of the Constitution, that we had to return to our founding documents. I argue that every American should read the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. They should know the Bill of Rights, and even the 10 Commandments. And it's not just for Christians, because the Bible and 10 Commandments affect every sector of our society. You cannot even understand literature and references that are being made in the culture unless you have some biblical foundations. And I felt like that no matter where you come from in the world, to be an American, you needed to know about these documents, because that was the glue that held us together.
Exactly. And you just mentioned culture, and that was the third book that I was going to show of yours too. So the third one is called Countercultural Living. And this one is a new one also, I believe?
Yeah, that came out in September of last year. And that book is part of a 12-book series, but I'm the only person in the series who isn't a theologian. And I sort of, in the preface, I give my Christian testimony. I came to Christ late in my life, in my 40s. I had my salvation experience. And in that book, each chapter starts with a question like, what is life? And I give a scriptural answer to that question. And then there's an anecdote that either draws on my life or on something that's relevant to the topic. And I am very transparent. I've always been transparent. So in my chapter on life, the section that discusses abortion, I share that I had an abortion in my early 20s. That chapter deals with euthanasia, as well as the animal-human embryo fusions that are taking place in science, and physician-assisted suicide. There's a chapter on race and ethnicity. There's so much about CRT and race that's torn our nation apart. But if we went back to what God says about race, what he says about nations, what he says about people, we would have a solution. What is marriage? God performed the first marriage. I've never been successful with marriages. I've been married twice. And so, I share that in the book. I believe in transparency. And there's a chapter about gender roles, within the church, some of the confusion We know about Me Too, where there's a church too movement too, where women are stepping forward about what's happened to them in the church. I talk about that and how single women may experience churches different than married women. And then there's a chapter on materialism. Some people would say that doesn't apply to me. Well, materialism is about more than acquisition of goods. I mean, it's about, in many ways, idolatry. Like you can be focused on the pursuit of fame, and not just wealth and acquisition, but there are other ways, that you can replace God with things that, that will leave a void because we were not designed, the acquisition of goods will not satisfy those empty places in our hearts.
We were talking in break about your books, and you were talking about a different book that you had, too, that would be a really good dovetail and a good companion to the CRT book. Go ahead and tell us about that, Carol.
And it's on my website. It's Abduction, How Liberalism Steals Our Children's Hearts and Minds. And so the title is self-explanatory. So many kids have sent their children, have raised them in strong traditional families, in church. They go off to college, and by Thanksgiving, they're questioning their faith, and by Christmas, they're atheists. We have all seen that happen. But in that book, we also talk about the public schools. And in 2016, they already had the LGBT curriculum in kindergarten and in, K through 12. So we're focused on all of these things today. It is a critical theory. It's not critical race theory, but there are other critical theories that are dangerous. Abduction is not about critical theory, but it's about what was taking place in our schools that alarmed us.
I myself went to public school after going to Lutheran parochial school, and I came back and I was talking about something of evolution, and my father's head snapped around and looked at me like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What did we teach you? So I can totally relate to that on a personal level because I myself got reeled back in here too. Let's talk about your, it's a conservative values project called Be the People Project. Can you speak to that a little bit?
That's a nonprofit that I created some years ago. And in the last couple of years, I've been able to have the resources to actually do events. One event I did in the fall that I'm really, I don't want to say I'm proud of it, but it was very successful. I had Bob Woodson of the Woodson Center. He's an 84-year-old Black civil rights activist. He's been around forever, working in grassroots communities. He's conservative. I had him, I spoke, and Keisha King, also known as Florida Mom, and we gave different generational perspectives on our conservatism, how we came to conservatism. We were all liberals at one point. We were all Democrats. And so we had an evening with Black conservatism. And my nonprofit has sponsored a tribute to police. And we also did an event on CRT and education with Dr. Ben Carson, and it was a 2-day conference, and we had panels. Rebecca Friedrichs, the producer of Whose Children Are They?
Oh, yes. And if you have not heard about that, I heard about that from my girlfriend in Hawaii because they did a screening all across the United States on that movie, correct?
Right, and I'm in that film. I'm also in a homeschooling film by Yvette Hampton, Schoolhouse Rocked. And I spent a lot of time, being in these films. Fox Nation, The Miseducation of America. I've been very, very busy because I think that there are things that are happening that parents and grandparents and teachers and administrators, people need to know what's happening so that they can figure out how to fight back.
Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about your website, and then I want to discuss what your topic is when you come to the Belle May Hoos. This is a BeTruthful.org event, by the way, and you can get your tickets at BeTruthful.org. So we'll hit that again at the end of the segment so you can see it too. Oh, there it is up on the screen. Thanks, guys. So let's talk about. First, I want to show your website because I really like what you have on your website, Dr. Swain. There's so much great information information on here, books, and then your public speaking, but then also the Be the People News is linked there, talking about the nonprofit, so many different things. And I love what it says on the bottom here. It says, holding politicians accountable. That also speaks to me because I feel like we need to do more of that.
We definitely do. We definitely do. And I have a website, bethepeoplenews.com, my television appearances, my blogs and interviews, all of those on the bethepeoplenews.com website, as well as links to my books. If you don't want to order them from Amazon, you can order them from a Christian bookstore.
I saw that. I like that too. You are doing things the right way. And I really want you to know that I think you are not alone in leaving the Democrat Party right now, because I think there are a lot of people rethinking their vote for Biden. I'm not joking. I've seen it over and over again. People switching parties like crazy.
Yeah, today I get my hair cut at a barbershop, a black barbershop, and the barber told me, we were the only two people in there. He said, I would deny this if you tell anyone. But I wish Trump was in office. If Trump was in office, none of this would be happening.
Oh, wow. Oh, he's outed now. He's in trouble now. Now your barber's watching this going, okay, thanks, lady. So let's talk about your visit. You're going to talk about CRT at the Balmehus on this coming Tuesday, the 29th of March.
Yes, and I'm going to talk about CRT. And normally the way I start my presentations, I don't know who's in the room. I give a little bit about my background because I think it establishes my credibility to speak. I came from nothing. I achieved the American dream. And I believe, that your attitude and what you believe is far more important than your race, your ethnicity or your social class, that all of these things, you can be rich and end up, with nothing, or you can be poor and make something of yourself. And so I start there, and then I work to a little bit about my university days and CRT, and then what it is and how people can fight back. There will be a call to action at the end.
Well, it sounds marvelous. I'm really looking forward to seeing you. And if you want tickets, go to betruthful.org. That's betruthful.org. You can get your tickets there. Make sure you get them. And thank you very much, Dr. Carol Swain, for being on our show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you.